And so what we're going to do now, everyone, is we're going to gather our candidates for the Manhattan Borough President. We're going to hear from them. So we'll ask all candidates, and thank you for your patience. We started late. We were waiting for folks to join us in our first group, and we had a lot of them, which we're happy about. And so thank you for your patience. We really appreciate this community, appreciates you taking some time out to talk to us Uptown. That means a lot. And so if every candidate who's for Manhattan Borough President can join us and put your camera on. Without your camera, we can't see you. So if you could turn the camera on so we can all see you, and then we'll be able to get started. Okay, somebody is saying, Adrian, some people are saying that their camera is disabled for some reason. Not sure why. Mr. Hoylman and oh, there's Mr. Hoylman. Okay, great. So Miss Boylan, she's still having problems. Are you able to work that out? If you turn on your, are you able to turn on your camera? Lindsey? Oh, there you are. I saw you before. I know I saw you before.
Yeah, but now I think I should. I don't know why I can't. Now it's not showing me. I was just on screen.
Yeah, I did see. There you are.
Okay, great.
Okay, whatever you're doing now, it's perfect. So great. I want to welcome our candidates for Manhattan Borough President to this forum, Uptown, on quality of life issues. Just so people know, we're going to let you start with a 2-minute opening statement, and then we will get into some questions for you. And so we will go in alphabetical order, and then we'll flip it each question. So each person will, we can start it, people get an opportunity to go first. And so let's start then with Ms. Boylan.
Sure. I was in kind of the dark and I had candlelight, but I thought that looks a little bit too like Oregon Trailish. So I'm moving to better lighting in my apartment, which we all have to do at some point later in the evening. So I'm really excited to be here. I'm a career urban planner and a progressive Democrat. I'm a mom raising my 7-year-old daughter in the city. I came to New York with $100 in my pocket, and I had 10 apartments actually in 9 years in Manhattan. I did this whole clockwise turn around the city. I've ended up in Chelsea. And I came here wanting to be a part of urban planning because I had read a book about the good urban planning can do in spite of the wrong it's done. And I think that's so poignant about where we are now. I've spent my first decade in New York managing public parks and focused on issues of parks equity and how to do traffic calming, how to implement things like Broadway Boulevard and pedestrianization of public spaces for people and making the city more livable. Then I went into municipal finance, so funding of government. And ultimately I worked for the state of New York. I was the jobs secretary. So completely focused and the highest ranking person in the state overseeing all job creation, small business services, minority and women run businesses, and support of that in our nation leading program. I helped pass paid family leave, $15 minimum wage, and I oversaw the state's recovery work in Puerto Rico after Hurricane Maria. And that I think would be my most proud moment, was doing that work, and also overseeing the state's recovery work after Hurricane Sandy and continuing until I left to implement those funds for New Yorkers. And, I think the job of the borough president now isn't just about recovery and economic development. It's about how we do more. We're not just going back to the same old New York City we had before. We have a lot more issues of equity, systemic racism to deal with, and how we actually get to grapple with the issues of inequality and the climate crisis that we've created. And there's no more important place to do that than the central business district, the cultural heart of our city, which includes all of Manhattan. And, a lot of my career has been how to make things work for people and how to center people closest to the pain. And I'm excited to be in this conversation tonight because, whether we're talking about Inwood or Washington Heights, there's such rich history and cultural heritage in our communities. And I think you deserve a borough president who's going to listen and show up and focus on the issues that matter and supporting communities as much as possible, whether it's dealing with illegal ATVs and dirt bikes that should not be on our city streets and should not be sold on Dykeman or Sherman, and should be better policed by the 33rd and 34th precinct. If it's dealing with noise complaints that far exceed anywhere else in the city, and making sure resources come back to our communities, whether it be parks or traffic calming and the like. And I'm so excited to be a partner and be in this conversation. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And I just ask all candidates, please try to stick to your time as much as possible because we are a little bit behind. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And then we'll have Ms. Caputo, please.
Sure. Thanks, everyone. And it's been great. I've worked with you all very closely. I work very closely with the Stop the Chop NYNJ. I think a number of those folks are on the call tonight to try to reduce some of the quality of life issues that have been a plague to our city for many, many months or years. But my name is Elizabeth Caputo, and I believe more strongly than ever that we need qualified new leadership to move our city forward. I am the only candidate in this race who is, other than Brad, who's chaired a community board. And part of the chairing community board is really looking at local issues. I am really excited about all I can contribute to doing that. We need to make sure that whoever we bring to office is going to make things safer, cleaner, greener, and more equitable to everyone. I have a plan to do it. We have a 21 bridges proposal on our website at elizabethcaputo.com. Again, I've spent 25 years living and working in the city. I've been an executive who has worked in municipal finance, who's devoted my entire career here since 1995 to actually helping our neighborhoods. We need to make sure that our neighborhoods come back, and we need to make sure that they're safer, and we need to make sure that they're more equitable for everyone. And I look forward to this conversation tonight, especially when it comes to issues related to pedestrian safety and issues related to the bikes and everything else. I've implemented 3 bike lanes during my career on Community Board 7 as a longtime chair. I want to make sure we're doing it safely, equitably, and responsibly. And nobody's going to do that better than somebody who knows how to do it neighborhood by neighborhood. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Senator Hoylman, sorry about that.
You can call me Brad. Thanks, Tanya. Brad Hoylman, State Senator. I represent currently the 72nd Street to Canal on the west side, and on the east side, 56th to 3rd. I've been a senator for 9 years. Before that, as Elizabeth alluded to, I was a community board chair for 3 years, member of a community board in the village for 10 years, and am a lawyer. Got my start in public service at the community level, working as a block association member and then becoming a board member and then a district leader and then running for office when my predecessor stepped down. Over the last 9 years, I've passed over 120 bills in the Senate. I'd like to, think some of them have been considered the most progressive, including legislation to make certain our kids get their shots so they can stay healthy and protect other people in their classes. This is way before COVID. I passed legislation to protect tenants in their homes. The New York State Tenant Safe Harbor Act was a bill I wrote to stop tenants from being evicted during the COVID-19 crisis. And I've passed legislation to take dangerous guns off our streets, including ghost guns, which are assembled in parts and aren't traceable by law enforcement. I've been working on the issues that you care about too, and I'm so glad that you are presenting this forum tonight, because oftentimes people forget that noise is a public health issue, and people lose sleep and their health deteriorates, and it often happens in lower income communities. And we need to correct that, and the next borough president needs to do that. I've introduced a bill called the Fighting Urban Racing in Our Streets Act, the Furious Act, and thank you for endorsing it. We're having a press conference on Thursday about it. And I'm also very interested in the issue of fireworks. We need to stop the sale of fireworks in the city and in the suburbs to protect our neighbors from them. But fundamentally, I believe we need to confiscate, not incarcerate illegal dirt bikes and ATVs. These should not be on our city streets. Thank you very much, Tanya.
Yeah. Benjamin Kallos. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Councilmember Ben Kallos, running for Borough President because everywhere else in America, people struggle to get out, but here in New York City, we're struggling to stay. I grew up with a single mom, went to the Bronx High School of Science where I was on free and reduced school lunch, and I was so ashamed to be poor that I didn't eat. And that's why in the city council, I made sure that lunch was free. Now I've got a plan to feed every kid 3 squares of meals a day to end youth hunger. A lifelong tenant, and I spent this pandemic living in a market rate 1 bedroom with my wife and daughter, and you can get to meet Pandora, the first feline of the district. She says hi, and I'll say it's been crowded living in that 1 bedroom for most of the pandemic. And I think the reason why none of us can afford to live here is because real estate developers get whatever they want from politicians that take their money, and that's why I've always refused real estate money. I think that together we can win a Manhattan that is affordable and where no kid goes hungry and no one gets forced from their home. And I really appreciate an opportunity to talk about quality of life issues. I'm not sure there is anyone with a stronger record on quality of life, whether it's on making our streets safer for pedestrians, cyclists, and even cars, or whether it's been on actually passing laws on reducing noise from after hours construction. I've got a strong record. It's part of the reason I was endorsed by Congressmember Carol Maloney and more than 80 labor unions. And I hope to have your support tonight. I hope you'll join our team at kallos.nyc, or you can just give me a call at 212-960-3440, and I'll yield my time back.
Thank you, Councilmember. We really appreciate it. Councilmember Mark Levine is next. I'll unmute you. There you go. Okay.
Thank you so much, Tanya. Thank you to you personally for what you've done to lead on this issue and helping to lead the Washington Heights and Inwood Noise Task Force. Thanks to all of you who have put forward such thoughtful solutions to this problem. You have really advanced the debate, and I've been grateful for your activism. It's been wonderful working with you over recent months and years on this critical challenge. I've been proud to be your neighbor for 25 years. I lived for many, many years on Pinehurst and 185th Street, lived for many years on Cabrini and 187th Street. Our kids went to PSIS 187. I know many of you from that time. Currently live on 163rd and 4 Washington Avenue. Many of you I know from my days founding and leading a community development credit union here, Neighborhood Trust, which has made thousands of loans in the community. Others I know from my years on Community Board 12, chairing the Transportation Committee. It's been the honor of my life to represent the 7th Council District over the last 7.5 years. I did chair the Parks Committee in the council, won millions of dollars for additional gardeners, maintenance workers, PEP officers, and park rangers at Parks Uptown. I passed landmark legislation establishing right to counsel for tenants facing eviction and housing court. And I've chaired the Health Committee and fought this pandemic with everything I've got. And as chair of the Health Committee, I know that noise is a health issue. And it's why I've redesigned streets throughout my district to calm traffic. It's why we put in new speed bumps, fighting to get another one in at your request on Riverside Drive north of 158th right now. And it's why today I publicized an action plan to tackle noise uptown, borough-wide, and beyond that focuses on tackling the scourge of ATVs, fireworks, revamping the city's noise code, and much more. Much of it developed in consultation with so many of you who've been leading on this issue. Very excited to talk more in depth about these challenges throughout our conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next, we have Kimberly Watkins.
Hi, Tanya. Thank you so much. Thank you for hosting us. And it's great to be back in community with my candidates, where we left one session and popped on over to this one. It's really exciting to continue these conversations. I'm a public school mom, and I've spent the last 6 years fighting for the public schools of District 3, which is the most segregated school district in the most segregated school system in the entire country. It is the Upper West Side and the lower part of Harlem, where I live with my family. And I have, as president, managed to get through two of the city's most progressive and successful initiatives in terms of public school governance. One was the Upper West Side rezoning, which happened in 2016 against the wishes of almost every West Side politician. And the mayor pulled the deal off the table. We had to coerce him to get it back through. And then the second was the middle school diversity initiative, something that the city as a whole is moving towards now through the District 3 plan that was instituted back in 2018. I'm also an advocate for really different structural decision-making within the school system. And I strongly believe on the quality of life issues that we're going to be talking about tonight. We have a vested interest in thinking about government differently, especially when it comes to this office, which has the ability to really lift up under the hood and think about how we put forth not just legislation, not just new task forces, but really make relationships work so that regular people aren't suffering so much, because we're suffering in regular life right now. And I'm really excited to talk about those implications, especially when it comes to the intersectional issues that I call Manhattan, the issues related to moms, related to childcare and healthcare, our school system, safety in our neighborhoods, and equal pay for equal work.
Thank you. And I think Ms. Watkins gave us a nice segue actually into our first question for you. We want to ask you about your role. We want to ask you to explain what your role would be. What is the Manhattan Borough President? Because I think a lot of times there's people in our community don't understand what that role is and what they do. And so if you could explain what, in your opinion, what the role is, and then what powers do you believe your office has the potential in terms of making improvements to the quality of life in New York City. So what do you see as your role? What is the Manhattan Borough President? What do they do? And then what powers do you think that office has to impact quality of life issues in New York City? If you can explain that. And we will start at the top again with Lindsey Boylan.
Sure. So I view the borough president's job as the person who's most responsible for livability in this borough. It's an urban planner's job for an urban planner. I know that's useful because that's what I do and that's what I've done my whole career, but it's really issues of land use and zoning, weighing in on that, directing the city to the resources we need more of, like affordable housing, deeply affordable housing, supportive housing, and senior housing, how we re-engineer our city for people to stay here and come here and not be displaced, and how we prepare for the future and in the climate crisis and deal with inequality, how we use the tools of appointments to the community boards, our most local version of organizing and city government, to make decisions at a local level that reflect our bigger goals of making a livable borough, the Community Education Council appointments as well, adding to that. And then more broadly, appointments to the broader Public Education Council, basically mayoral control, one appointment to that. But how do we use that bully pulpit and all the specific tools in the toolbox and every resource to make this borough as livable as possible? And this time and in this context, not just have it recover economically in terms of small business and job creation and safety issues, but actually deal with the underlying issues of inequality. That's what I view the job as.
Thank you so much. And next, Miss Elizabeth Caputo. I'll unmute you. I'm sorry. Thank you.
No worries. Thanks so much. I know we've been on all of these calls. Look, I've been a long time Community Board 7 chair. I know exactly what this job entails. There are 3 responsibilities statutorily. One is being a bully pulpit. I lived here during 9/11 when families were crossing the Brooklyn Bridge, and I saw Marty Markowitz crossing the Brooklyn Bridge and standing up with a megaphone to be the bully pulpit for the city. That's an important role. There's a second role, which is really important, which is on land use and zoning. And that can only come from somebody who's been an executive, somebody who's actually led major development and zoning projects throughout this city. That is what I have done throughout my entire career as a community board member for over a decade, not just being a member, but being a chair, and the longest serving elected chair. And then the third is really the appointments process. And I care very deeply about the appointments process. And it's one of the big things as a community board chair that I want to reform. We need to make sure that we have board chairs who are looking at things in a non-political way, and that we are really looking at how we appoint people. And nobody's going to do that in a better way than I will, because I've actually been the person who's done it in the best and longest serving way. So I know Brad knows this as well, but between the two of us, I feel very strongly that that's a very important piece of local government. So whether it comes to housing, affordability, other issues, that is something that you need executive leadership to do. And I'm the person who, from my career and 25 years of living and working here, will get done for you as Manhattan Borough President. Thanks.
Thank you. And Mr. Senator Hoylman, please.
All right, thanks, Tanya. Yeah, I think that, the borough president, of course, has that central land use role, central role in landmarks, central role in planning. Some people refer to the borough president as the planner in chief of the borough. I like to think of the borough president as the convener in chief. There's your charter mandated responsibility around city services, and that would include whether the noise code is being enforced, where it's being enforced. There's a public hearings role in the borough presidency, and I'd like to see that implemented around quality of life issues. And of course, the borough president can introduce legislation, just like I've done in Albany, 120 bills and counting. I think what I want to do in the first 100 days to define my borough presidency, should I have the honor of being elected, is allow every community board, all 12, work with them and institute 197A local community planning rezonings. And those are not just about land use. Those can be about issues, including noise and quality of life. Let's formally identify what the boards think are important so we can get a formal response from the city and get out first. And then finally, I want to create something that I'm calling BoroughStat, where I look at, on a visual data-driven way, how city services are being dispensed across the city so we can understand where disparities exist. Why is the noise code being, for example, enforced in the West Village, but not perhaps in Inwood? That's what we need to know. And then finally, legislation. I want you to know that not only do I have this bill called the Furious Act, but I'm looking at overriding the mayor's concession power with regard to tourist helicopters in Manhattan. Look, if we're not getting action from the city of New York on these crazy tourist choppers, then I think the state should take action and prevent the mayor from entering into these agreements.
Thank you. Okay, you can cut the tones. Okay, and next we have Councilmember Kallos, please.
Thank you. Do you mind repeating the question?
Sure. We were asking about your role as Manhattan Borough President because a lot of people don't understand what the role is. And so we wanted you to explain, what is the Manhattan Borough President? What do you do? What is the role of the office? And what powers do you think you have in that role, to impact quality of life in New York City?
Sure. I grew up here. I grew up living with a single mom in a one-bedroom. And the biggest power of the borough president is land use. And for far too long, we have elected officials who are taking money from real estate developers and giving them whatever they want. Not how I do it in my district. And that's why we don't have the types of things happening in my neighborhood as we've seen in the Inwood upzoning and Soho upzoning and what have you. But yet we're still building more housing and more affordable housing than anywhere else in the city, and building housing for homeless women and children and homeless shelters. And we've been able to do that through my leadership working with the borough president. And when Billionaires Row was marching into my district. We did something no one else had ever done, and we rezoned to stop super talls while their elected officials just saw fit to take the money from the real estate developers. Then we took the momentum from that and we actually rezoned my council district, the West Side Council District, and in fact, all the way up to you, all the R10 and R9 districts, we were able to stop them from putting out voids of unlimited height, again, over the opposition of local council members and folks who were taking money from real estate developers. And so the land use power is incredibly important. The budget power goes beyond capital funding, where a lot of elected officials give their money to nonprofits that have multi-million-dollar endowments and fail to invest in their communities. In my district, we've invested in every single school, every single park, to the tunes of almost more than $500 million for our parks. I'd like to do that for your neighborhood too. Every school in my district sent their kids home with laptops when this pandemic started. Your kids deserve that too. And so I'm just a kid who grew up here who wants to make sure that no one gets pushed out and that we invest in our parks and our schools. I yield back my time.
Thank you. And next, Councilmember Levine.
Thank you so much, Tanya. My colleagues have done a really good job in laying out the powers of the office in land use, in budget, in introducing legislation, and of course, in making over 1,000 appointments to various boards and bodies. What it all adds up to is a very powerful platform for putting forward bold ideas and organizing to achieve them. This is what I've done in the council. I'm only one of 51 members, but we made history by defeating the landlord lobby and passing right to counsel for tenants facing eviction in housing court because I led a 3-year organizing campaign, starting a national movement now. 7 other cities in 1 state have followed our lead. This is the kind of leader I'll be for the borough, putting forth bold ideas like creating residential parking permits so that New York City can join the ranks of almost every other big city in America to establish programs like this. We desperately need it in CB12. Every morning we have cars coming in from New Jersey and other suburban areas parking on our local streets. We could stop this through residential parking permits. I will lead a re-examination and updating of the city's noise code, which is a decade and a half out of date. And we have had new challenges emerge in the year since, some of which we're talking about tonight. But we've also had new technologies emerge that could serve as tools to tackling these problems, technologies that weren't accounted for the last time the noise code was updated. I'll lead an audit and improvement of 311, where it's just far too easy for the PD and other agencies to clear complaints when really they haven't been addressed. I've been working intensely with folks in the administration, pushing hard now to get to the bottom of this. But what you are experiencing, what we're experiencing uptown is not your imagination. There are 311 complaints which are cleared out before they're actually addressed. This is unacceptable. I'm fighting on this now, and I'll continue to fight as your borough president for big policies to tackle the kinds of quality of life issues we're discussing tonight. Thank you, Tanya.
Thank you. Ms. Watkins.
Thank you so much. So many great perspectives here. I'm going to start by talking about something I did earlier today. I hosted a middle school student speak out in District 3 with middle school students from a bunch of different schools that were focused on educational issues. And we meet once a week. And one of the interesting questions that these youngsters have posed to the Department of Education leaders that have met with them, and they've met with multiple state senators and city council members and regents, et cetera, is, why are decisions always made by people that we do not elect? Like, where's the democracy in our democracy? And it always brings back to me this sort of notion that coming from Virginia, where the grassroots kind of conduit for elected office at the city and state level is the school board. It's the local school board. And we don't really have that in New York anymore because of mayoral control. We neutered our school boards, and we have community boards, and there's a great deal more power and authority vested with the community board. But one of the things that I think our next borough president could do would be to champion some of these structures and changes, transform some of the way that we do the work of the local government so that neighborhoods can have more authority, but maybe we need to start electing more of the members of these entities that that make changes and make decisions and represent regular New Yorkers to higher authority. So those are a couple of things that I would like to do. The other thing I really would like to see is that the borough board be a larger, expanded group of influencers in the borough, to include our elected school board leaders, to include our heads of our police, at least our borough of Manhattan North and South police leaders, and to really make a sort of a senior level organizing entity that would allow communities, especially disparate levels of communities, to begin to work together better.
Thank you. And we're going to start actually with you, Ms. Watkins. We're going to take two live questions from our attendees. And we're going to ask you to limit your answers to like 90 seconds, a minute and a half, and rapid fire. So Dave, I understand we have a couple of questions from our attendees.
Yes, Lynn has our first question. Go ahead, Lynn.
Yes, hopefully you all can hear me.
Yes.
What specific measures would the candidates take to eliminate illegal fireworks? And I'm underlining the word specifically. Everyone knows they're bad, but what measures would you take? Thank you very much.
Thank you for that question, Lynn. So we're gonna go through each candidate, or I'm taking the two questions now at the same time?
No, you're gonna take these questions.
Oh, okay, cool. So I was an auxiliary police officer for many years before I became a parent and joined the school board on the Upper West Side and Lower Harlem. One of the things that we always did was simply be out in the neighborhood. I think presence is an element of community strength that we are missing. I think we need to confiscate the any and all fireworks that we find, and I think we need a much stronger sense of awareness in terms of where we know that the fireworks are being set off, right? I mean, we may need to really take a look at our maps and focus in on some of the neighborhoods. Mine is one of them, where I live on 116 and Adam Clayton Powell Jr. Boulevard. It is an issue every warm night, along with the motorcycles and all the other things that I'm sure we're going to be talking about as well. But specifically, we need to confiscate them, and we need to have penalties, and potentially maybe there's an element of buying them back, and disposing of them in a safe way as well.
Thank you. And next, we're going to have Councilmember Levine, please.
Thank you so much, Tanya. You know, I live on 163rd Street, as I mentioned, and the fireworks have already started this year, which is a very worrisome portend to what may be ahead. And it points out one of the flaws in the mayor's plan in his fireworks task force, which is to start the work of the task force only after Memorial Day. That should be started at the latest May 1st. And the goal really needs to be to interdict essentially the importation of illegal fireworks from states where these are bought wholesale. That's how they're coming into the city. We need to crack down on that flow of fireworks into New York City, where often they're sold illegally. There's no ambiguity there. This is not allowed. If we can crack down on the supply, then we will improve this problem for all of our neighborhoods. So we need a strengthened fireworks task force that starts its work earlier, that interdicts the flow of fireworks into our neighborhood, so we can avoid another hellish summer like the one we experienced in 2020. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Kallos, please. I'll unmute you.
Thank you. When it comes to the fireworks, they're everywhere. And I think what's kind of disappointing is they end up being most used in communities where the elected officials just, I don't know what or why, but just aren't really doing the jobs. So I think first, we shouldn't be taking credit for your ideas. You put together an amazing plan of action, and wrote a letter. Our borough president has also sent a letter on, and I agree wholeheartedly about having the task force kick up on May 1st, not waiting till Memorial Day. That's not an idea that I'm going to steal from you. I'm going to implement it and make it happen. But the other piece is you can't just say, oh, it's out of our hands. You have to work in partnership with the NYPD. And so it seems like the NYPD ends up doing a lot of things they shouldn't be doing, like doing homeless outreach or walking around our parks and being in our schools. And if we pulled them out, we could have them out on the streets dealing with things specifically like this. And so in my district, the 19th precinct is doing an amazing job. But what I'd like to do in East Harlem, which I do represent with the 23rd precinct, is make sure that we actually have police out there and interacting with the folks. And the issue isn't that you see one firework go off, it's that they start going off and then they don't stop. And then the police don't even get dispatched to do anything, or if they do, they just don't. So we need to actually make sure that folks are paying attention and that they're actually doing the enforcement and getting it to stop once it starts. And that's what an elected official's job is. That's what I'll do as borough president.
Thank you. Senator Hoylman.
Yeah, thanks. And I've been working on noise issues with Senator Robert Jackson, who's endorsed my campaign. I have the endorsement of Virginia Fields and other leaders like Leader Keith Wright. But I want to say that I agree that interdiction is part of it. Fireworks can be purchased legally, though, outside of the city and just brought in. But it's deeper than that. It's deeper than that, Tanya. It's about what opportunities are we providing to our young people. They're bored out of their minds. They're going to, let off fireworks. That's kind of partly what happens. I think the borough president can do something interesting in terms of summer youth and making certain that our children have opportunities. Our young people have opportunities. They should have them throughout the borough. In my district, Google offers internships, summer internships to young people at the Chelsea Elliott houses. Well, Google is a multi-billion-dollar company. They should be doing it in Inwood and across the entire city and every public housing project included. There are so many companies, Fortune 200 companies, frankly, that aren't pulling their weight to ensure that our kids have the opportunities they deserve and the experience that would enrich themselves. And I think fireworks and street racing is such an interesting contrast into how our government and how big corporations are failing our young people.
Thank you. Elizabeth Caputo.
Thanks for unmuting me. That's great. And it's been great to hear from everyone tonight. Like, look, it's a serious issue and it's a local issue and it requires local leadership, and whoever gets elected to this job needs to be somebody who can handle things at a very local level. I look to what was just in the news on May 21st, just a few days ago, about a firework that was flung in Midtown, and that happened and somebody was seriously injured. That should not happen again. Again, I go back to my feelings about public safety. I think whoever gets elected to this job needs to be somebody who is prioritizing public safety and equity and making sure that we're doing it in a right way. But I haven't heard a single thing from anyone tonight from the elected officials who could have had an opportunity to help over the last 8 or 9 years, really protect public security for people in our neighborhoods. And that hasn't happened yet. And as borough president, it's going to be something that needs to be prioritized given what we're going through. And it needs to be something for the sake of all of our neighbors and all of the people, regardless of their religious background, their ethnicity, and where they live. And I will make that my top priority when I'm borough president. Thanks.
Thank you. Lindsey Boylan.
I think there's a lot in common both with the ATVs, dirt bikes, and the fireworks. Originally from where I'm from in San Diego, both are really popular and just as problematic and fun and have their right place, which is not in a big city like this. And I don't think it's just kids. I think it's adults a lot more frequently than we would hope, being bad actors. I think it takes a combination of some of the things that have been said. I really like what Kim said about being out in the community and being a known entity and trusted. And she has that experience from, being a liaison in the community policing. I think it's important. I know that the mayor put out this fireworks commission, but I've not seen any product of that. We don't need to over police any community, but I do think we should focus on the supply, particularly of really serious fireworks. I don't need to tell you, we're not talking about sparklers. We're talking about things that can take a building out, can, put a building on fire, can hurt someone, incapacitate someone, and there should be much steeper fines on that. And I think that's the kind of thing that policing and public safety is critically a part of and should be a part of as we move out, like mental health calls and school policing. So I don't think it's just kids, fortunately or unfortunately, and I think both have to be dealt with creatively, steeper fines, and much more direct engagement from the police. And I think the community in Upper Manhattan deserves better. There's more noise complaints here than most parts of the city. And that says a lot, I think, about your partners in public safety as well.
Thank you. So now we're going to take another live question from our attendees. And Dave?
Yes, this actually leads into our next live question. Jennifer, if you want to proceed.
Hi, candidates. I wanted to ask how you, as Manhattan Borough President, will specifically take action to review the police force and their effectiveness or ineffectiveness and seemingly unwillingness in many cases in addressing the quality of life issues which escalate into bigger issues in our respective uptown precincts and districts. And how would you personally handle that task?
Thank you. Great question. Ms. Boylan, you're first.
I love this. And my first decade in New York, I spent managing public spaces, including Bryant Park, which went through its own history of, problems and challenging situation, revival. A lot of it had to do with urban planning and exactly the kind of work I want to do when I become your borough president and your partner, which is all about how can we in some way show up the police and say, this is one of the most serious contributors to safety and livability, has everything to do with getting people back on the city streets, has everything to do with positive interactions in the public realm, has everything to do with positively programming public space. How can I be your partner from either a capital support perspective, supporting community boards, really showing police how much of safety has little to do with what they're doing and put them back in their appropriate role, which I think in some respects, this moment has given certain police leaders the opportunity to abdicate responsibility, which is not what we're saying. We're saying we don't want you in certain interactions in the community that racially profile our young people, that make interactions with people dealing with mental illness or a mental health emergency get more serious and have the potential for violence and harm causing. The great thing about being the urban planner for this borough, which is what the job is and what I am, is there's so much of it that has to do with making it a much more livable, safe borough. And if need be, showing the police how we can do that in partnership. That's exactly what I did with the Midtown South precinct. It's what I'd love to do with precinct 33 and I believe 34. Showing them up with our community to the extent that's necessary, because there's so much of safety that has a lot to do with well-programmed space and people who care about it.
Thank you. Elizabeth Caputo, please.
Thank you, Tanya. This job is a job that requires leadership. It requires somebody who's been able to work with local police precincts at an executive level. I've done that. I work with the 2.0 and the 2.4 to get things done. We invited them to come to our community board meetings and actually host real community board meetings to have conversations about these issues. This is not an issue. I have seen several of my fellow candidates talk about defunding the police. To me, this is not a time to defund the police. It's about reallocation. It's about reform. It's about how to do things at an executive level to get things done. So I go back to what I did when I had my community board meetings every single month for years. And we had people in our neighborhood who came, the director of the 2.0 and the 2.4 who came to our meetings. We got things done, whether it was a bike lane or whether it was a serious issue on our block. And we did it because I invited those folks to come to our meetings. It's going to involve collaboration and the willingness to work with everyone. And that's what I'll do as your Manhattan Borough President. Thanks.
Thank you. Senator Hoylman, please.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's about data collection and analyzing the data. That's why I want to create Borough Stat to build on what Gail Brewer has done in terms of data at NYC in her office. I've worked on data analysis my Senate career. I passed a bill called Police Stat, which is like CompuStat, except it examines who the police are arresting, what is their ethnic background, what is the crime that they are charged, who dies in custody. Believe it or not, we never had that information before we passed my Police Stat Act. I believe in the transparency of the police. That's why I was one of the co-sponsors of the bill that repealed 50A, the police secrecy law that kept the personnel records of police secret. So I think we shine a harsh light on the disparities in enforcement and uneven enforcement, just like we did when I passed my legislation that repealed the so-called walking while trans ban, which disproportionately affected transgender women of color.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Councilmember Kallos, please.
I represent the Upper East Side and East Harlem, and I see very different, a big difference in how the city responds and delivers services above and below 96th Street. In my district, people complained about litter and overflowing trash cans, so I bought a new trash can on every corner. I hear that in large parts of Uptown Manhattan, they just took the trash cans off the street instead of just buying new trash cans that would be covered. When people complained about bikes, we did education, equipment, enforcement. You can learn more about it at kallos.nyc. But it's safer to be a pedestrian, a cyclist, or a motorist in my district now than it was when I got elected. When people were complaining about after-hours construction, while your local council member didn't amend the noise code, I actually did, and I turned down the volume on construction by half and changed the law so DEP could enforce the law without going in your house. When the mayor wasn't doing anything about the homeless, I started a coalition with Gail Brewer and Liz Kruger to help individual homeless people by name. I want to do it borough-wide, and that leaves the police open to focus on major crimes and people riding on sidewalks, on motorcycles and ATVs, and we need that for the entire borough.
Someone's phone. Thank you. Thank you so much. Councilmember Levine, please.
Well, thank you, Tanya. This is about metrics. It's about accountability. It's about coordination. It's about leveraging technology. It's about innovative strategies. I will push forward on every one of those fronts as borough president to tackle noise problems uptown and borough-wide. I'll explore deployment of noise sensing technology. This has been very successful with shot spotters that the PD has deployed. We need similar technology to detect excessive noise and therefore collect a data set that can hold local precincts and other authorities accountable. We need to make sure that red light cameras and speed cameras are going 24/7 to hold cars accountable that are speeding or in other ways acting recklessly. We do need to amend the noise code, and there may be a role for citizens using technology to track noise themselves, possibly even with cell phone apps, activating a new data set that we can use to track the problems in the city. As borough president, I will work aggressively to hold every agency accountable, including local precinct commanders, on noise, on behalf of quality of life, and all the issues that we're discussing tonight. Thank you, Tanya.
Thank you. Ms. Watkins.
Just a point of clarification. I thought I was answering a question about our relationship with the NYPD. Can you just ask the question one more time? I'm sorry.
Yes, is the person who asked the question still able to repeat it?
Yes, thank you for asking about that, Kim, because so far nobody has actually addressed the specific action they would take to review the police force and their effectiveness or ineffectiveness and seemingly unwillingness in many cases to address our quality of life issues that are escalating into bigger issues in our respective uptown precincts and districts. So I'm wondering how you would review the police force in their effectiveness or ineffectiveness and how you would personally handle that task.
Right. Thank you, Jennifer. I thank you for doing that. So, I think first and foremost, I want to reemphasize that I've walked the beat, if as it were, in that I was an auxiliary police officer for many years in the 2-4. I lived on 105th and Broadway for most of my single life, and I think that the communities in our city have a relationship with the individuals who serve as police officers, and there is a human element to this that we just keep missing. And we do it for in a number of ways. One is the leadership at the top, and it's the mayor's relationship to the commissioner that has really, I think, worn down and shown us how ineffective a manager we have in terms of actual reporting structures to our communities, right? The NYPD is kind of not doing its job anymore as a direct result of the relationship that the government has with the police department. So I think part of it is rebuilding the trust between the various entities. And then the last thing I just want to add is that police officers' starting salary is $42,000. And we need all of our essential workers, our first responders, to be paid a living wage from the get-go. And I think our police officers need to live in our communities.
Thank you. Okay, so next what we're gonna do is just have let you wrap up. You will get 1 minute. I would like to do something a little different. Instead of just having you talk about whatever randomly, I would like to sort of let you take this minute to address something that people have been asking, like how are you going to be different as a Manhattan Borough President? What are you bringing to the table that's going to be different from your predecessors? What's going to be special about you that you're going to bring that's going to make you more effective in dealing with these quality of life issues that perhaps has not happened in the past in this position? And so we will start with Ms. Watkins. There you go.
There we go. Sorry about that.
No problem.
You know, I think the thing that I want to emphasize is that I do not want power. I am not running for this office in order to collect breadcrumbs of power like most of our elected officials do along the way. It is not for me about getting to a point so that I can get to another point so that I can maybe run for some other office someday. I want to leave this city a better place for my kid and for the rest of the people that live in my neighborhood and live in our borough and in our city. And we have a collection of individuals who have been making decisions for our city that have not been doing that job for us. So I want to be a person, a borough president for you that gives you back your power, your voice. And by doing that, I mean, that's why I talk about having more elections. That's why I talk about students participating in decision-making more. It is, I am the borough president that wants to give the people the power back in our government.
Thank you. Appreciate you being succinct. Councilmember Levine.
Well, thank you so much. I mean, Gail Brewer is amazing, so it's very difficult to talk about anything I'd want to do better than her. I'll just say it's a different time than when she took office 8 years ago. And quality of life challenges have emerged over this pandemic year that are in some cases more acute than those that we faced 8 years ago. And so as borough president, I will focus on these challenges, and I'll use some of the unique qualities I think I bring to the office. First, a deep connection to public health and a profound understanding of the ways that noise is indeed a health issue. Secondly, the ability to build and put together multi-ethnic coalitions. Muchos de ustedes ya saben que hablo español. And so I am going to put together a coalition that is not riven by the diversity of our borough. In fact, that will be a strength which brings us together to fight towards these challenges. And finally, I have a background in physics. I'm a guy who's driven by data, and I'll use that to hold agencies accountable, whether the issue is noise or any of the other quality of life challenges that we've discussed tonight. So I think this is my last chance to speak. So thank you all so much for this important discussion. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you. We appreciate it. Councilmember Kallos.
Thank you. Thank you all for putting together this event. What makes me special in this field of candidates is that I have more in common with you than I do with them. I grew up here. I went to Bronx Science. I've been a tenant all my life, I don't take money from real estate, and I don't know the issues because I've actually lived the issues. And I'm a fixer, and that's what the borough president under my leadership will be. And so in my district, when we have quality of life problems, I fix them. We paint graffiti, we put trash cans on corners, we take on bike safety, and we actually do the work. We just don't talk about it. And we actually change the noise code to actually lower the volume on after hours construction noise. And right now I only represent the Upper East Side, a small portion of East Harlem. I want to be borough president so I can actually do the work of fixing the problems that you're all talking about in this community, and that you're desperate for real leadership and somebody to actually represent you. I'd love to be that person. You can support me at kallos.nyc.
Thank you. Senator Hoylman.
Thank you for this forum too. I think what makes me unique of sorts is that I've been a progressive champion in the Senate. I think my record speaks for itself, over 120 bills passed. I'd be the first gay borough president, first openly gay borough president. I'm a dad of a dyslexic daughter. I think that makes me unique in that I want to institute universal kindergarten dyslexia screening for all 5-year-olds. I have a reputation for getting big things done, and I'd like to continue that as borough president. I'd also like to double down on President Brewer's helicopter task force. In fact, I'd like to put it out of business, work with our federal elected officials, pass a law in Albany and City Hall that the mayor can't indiscriminately enter into concession agreements for non-essential helicopter rides. There's a lot at stake here, but thank you for bringing these issues of quality of life and noise to light. They're so important for our public's health. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Next, Ms. Caputo.
Sure, I want to thank everyone in the task force. This has been a great conversation tonight, and we're friends with everyone. So it's been great to talk to everyone. Again, my name is Elizabeth Caputo, and I hope you'll join me and rank me #1 for Manhattan Borough President on June 22nd or beforehand during early voting. I bring 25 years of executive experience between Manhattan's public and private sectors. I've been the longest serving chair of Community Board 7. I've been a grassroots organizer running DL21C for over a decade, and I know how to get things done. So whether it's been a complicated rezoning plan related to affordable housing, securing 3 new bike lanes throughout the neighborhood, building the city's first accessible playground, those are all things that the borough president is charged with doing, and I've gotten done. So I bring the local knowledge and the experience to bridge the coalitions that are necessary. I also just want to say that I bring a fresh experience that's rooted in this local experience, and I'm ready to get to work on day 1. I hope you'll check out our 21 Bridges proposal and go to our website, elizabethcaputo.com, to make it happen. And I look forward to working with you in the days and months ahead, especially on issues related to Uptown and related to the helicopters and to the bike noise and other things that I've been working firsthand on with community groups. Thank you.
Thank you. And last but not least, Ms. Boylan.
Thank you so much, Tanya. And thank you for this conversation tonight. You know, we hear a lot now and every day about big real estate, about the powers that be, about Albany, about the mayor and the governor. And at the end of the day, we can all have nice ideas and pieces of legislation that we pass in Albany, but what really matters is if you're willing to speak truth to power and do something about it. And I think that's a real rarity to have that courage. I've shown that recently. I will show that regularly. And I think it's an integral part of this job because member deference, things like that, going along with the big plan for Penn Station, going along with the supposed affordable housing that's embedded in Inwood rezoning, which doesn't get you that. All of these things end up tacitly moving forward because someone looked the other way. And I think you need someone and a leader who's never really been part of the club. I think it's a good woman who can do that. I admire Gail for doing it. And the other piece of what I've loved and learning about is planning. So
Sorry about that.
Doing the things you need to do about it, and it'd be the honor of my life to do this job. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I want to thank all of you for one of you will be the winner. So, and whomever it ends up being, remember us Uptown. You know, this is a vibrant community. We deserve attention up here, and we thank you for making yourselves available. I know how busy you are, and I appreciate that. And I appreciate your patience tonight as we had a late start. Thank you for your attention to these issues and to Uptown. We will remain in touch, the task force and the community, with you as we go through leading up to the election. Thank you for everything. And we will see you soon. Take care. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over now to Dave Tom, who's going to